Here are the ancient technologies that science can't explain. In Peru, 220 kilometers in the southwest of the city of Cajamarca is one of the most fascinating archaeological sites of the world, and one of the first technological achievements of the primitive humanity. It is the Aqueduct of Cumbermaio, built at 3,500 meters of altitude in a volcanic region. But it is not the only beauty of the site, as we will see. More than 3,000 years ago, a long time before the appearance of the Incas, lived a discreet, ingenious, and skillful community. This primitive society lived of the productions of the earth. But the recurrent drought, which struck the country, harmed a lot the agricultural activities. The inhabitants of the region then had the idea to conceive one of the first hydraulic systems of the world. They undertook this project with modest means, using a common and rudimentary tool, volcanic rocks. Using this type of rock, called obsidian, they dug an aqueduct more than 9 kilometers long. This work was intended to divert water from the hills and to bring it to the plowable land, and it was a complete success. As these people were religious, they did not content themselves with making a purely useful construction. They also built stairs leading to a ceremonial altar and carved complex and enigmatic designs on the volcanic rocks. These designs, like the aqueduct, still exist today. They are studied by archaeologists, but they have still not managed to penetrate their mysterious meaning. These figures and symbols are not yet elucidated. However, the Aqueduct of Cumbermaio remains a concrete and evident wonder of the practical genius of the primitive humanity. Jainism is a religion quite similar to Buddhism, which is practiced by a minority of Indians. This form of spirituality was born in the 10th century before Christ and has been perpetuated to the present day. It was in the 15th century or so that Jainism became famous for its formidable artistic designs, which have nothing to envy the most sublime buildings in history. In the states of Rajasthan and Gujarat, India, there are monumental sculptures up to 17 meters high, and caves that contain about 30 temples. What amazes most are the dimensions of the idols carved from the same rock, which represent the traditional deities of the religion. Most of them were built during the reign of a generous king and his son who succeeded him in the 15th century. But in the 16th century, a powerful emperor ordered their destruction. Fortunately, these giant statues were not damaged beyond repair. Only a few were amputated of their limbs. However, the Jain community was able to repair the losses. Today the site is protected, and tourists can admire these prodigious deities. Have you ever heard of the mysterious story of the Saqqara bird? It is one of the most enigmatic objects that scientists have discovered. In 1898, Dr. Khalil Messiah, an Egyptian archaeologist, was excavating a burial site at Sapo. He discovered by chance a bird figurine, small and light, but with a curious shape. It was almost in every respect a bird, except for the wings, which are those of a modern jet plane. These wings are made of a single piece of wood, thick in the middle and thin at the tips. The edge of the wings is very slightly bent. These significant details suggest that more than 2 millennia ago, the Egyptians had some advanced knowledge of aerodynamics. This is why such an object has baffled Egyptologists, giving rise to a host of interpretations and controversies. Moreover, it had been proven that this object could fly for a few meters when manually projected into the air. Perhaps this bird was only the preconceived model of a great machine, which the engineers of the time had to design? Scientific opinions are divided. Some maintain that the resemblance of this bird with an airplane is purely fortuitous, and others imagine that the Egyptian genius was technologically more advanced than we want to believe. In 1912, a library in the town of Frascati, Italy, a Polish antiquarian, Wilfried M. Voynich, got hold of a strange and unique book. It is a vellum manuscript with at least 200 pages containing texts and images. So far, nothing extraordinary. But the language used in this book, its genre, its author, its content, are completely unknown to this day. The only thing we know for sure is that the book was written in the 15th century. This manuscript, to which the Polish antiquarian gave his name, is a succession of question marks that will probably never be resolved. In spite of the continuous efforts of the most experienced cryptographers, it has never been possible to know whether this book was a treatise on alchemy, a treatise on herbal medicine, an occult work, or simply a kind of big joke. The language of the Voynich manuscript follows a coded system, but no specialist has been able to decipher it. One is even beginning to believe that this language makes absolutely no sense. All the linguists who have tried their hand at it have lost their patience and have finally given up, concluding that it is surely a fraud. All kinds of interpretations have been made, from the most recent to the most far-fetched. For example, the antiquarian Voynich was even suspected of having made it. This is certainly not true. To this day, the meaning of the mysterious manuscript has not yet been discovered. Perhaps one day it will be. If it does, it will certainly be a triumph of the spirit of scientific analysis. In several European countries, individuals or researchers have discovered several objects similar to each other, which are called Dodicahedrons. They are of Roman origin, and their manufacture goes back probably to the first centuries of the Christian era. These Roman dodecahedrons are geometrically shaped objects. They are either in bronze or in stone and have 12 faces, each of which is pierced by a circular hole. What is the purpose of these objects, which are widespread in Italy, France, Germany, Hungary, and England? No document allows us to know. This mystery has given rise to much speculation. It has been thought that it was an astronomical tool, a candlestick, a board game piece, a decorative object, or a religious relic. At present, none of these hypotheses is more plausible than the others. The function of the Roman dodecahedrons remains a complete mystery, which does not prevent them from being exhibited in several museums. The Chinese inventor Zhang Heng was an accomplished man of genius. Born in the year 78, this eminent man was what one could be in the field of arts and science. Mathematician, astronomer, geographer, statesman, but also poet and specialist of Chinese literature. Zhang Heng had all the chances to mark the posterity by his works and his discoveries. But if he is famous today, it is for an audacious invention of which he had the idea. He wanted to design an instrument to predict and identify the occurrence of an earthquake. He set to work and produced this machine of a strange aesthetic. This earthquake detector looks like a vase attached to a receptacle and complicated with strange ornaments. This tool is actually much more complex than it looks. It has 8 dragons on the surface with their heads facing down, marking the directions of the primary compass. In front of each dragon sits a bronze toad with a gaping mouth. With each detected earthquake, depending on its location, one of the dragons propels a metal ball directly into the mouth of the toad facing it. The noise corresponds to a signal that alerts those present that an earthquake has occurred within a radius of several hundred kilometers. This is what happened in the year 138. While the detector was placed in the royal palace, one of the dragons spat out the ball in order to warn that an earthquake had occurred. And despite the incredulity of those present, it was confirmed a few days later, thanks to a messenger, that an earthquake had indeed occurred in the western region of Long. This increased the admiration of the public towards Zhang Heng. Today, seismographs are of course much more developed, but none equals in beauty this Chinese invention. Every Viking enthusiast knows the legendary Ulfbird Swords. These blades, terrible and coveted by all illustrious warriors, deserve their place here, because they surpassed in quality and power all other swords of the medieval world. The first makers of these swords had the idea to import steel from India or Persia, where the quality of the material was incomparably superior. Their name, Ulfbird, was certainly that of the founder of the workshop where such weapons were made. These swords, powerful and indestructible, so conquered the warriors who used them that the inscription Ulfbird had become a kind of prestigious brand. Kings and glorious fighters desired this sword as an aid to their greatness. Besides, only the most fortunate could acquire it. They cost the equivalent of a small castle. According to specialists, these weapons were of such superior quality that it was not until the 18th century that swords with comparable characteristics were finally produced. As with all rare and expensive objects, there were many counterfeits circulating in Europe. But it was easy for a warrior to compare them and identify the fake sword. The Ulfbird Swords remain to this day surrounded by myth, and no doubt we still do not know all the secrets they conceal. In the north of India, there is an old construction dating from the 5th century. It is called the Iron Pillar of Delhi. This pillar, which measures more than 7 meters, fascinates the specialists of metallurgy for 2 reasons. The first is that this metal pillar is 99.72% pure iron. Such purity of materials was only observed in the West after the Industrial Revolution. The second reason is that this pillar is admirably resistant to corrosion and rust. Yet it is located in a region that is very prone to monsoon rains. According to the analyses, this impermeability is explained by the thick layer of iron, oxygen, and hydrogen, made on purpose on the pillar, like a protective film. The scientists are amazed. According to one of them, this pillar is a living testimony to the skill of the ancient Indian metallurgists. But this pillar has not only suffered the rigors of the climate. Indeed, if one examines carefully, halfway up, one notices a clearly perceptible crack. It is obviously the impact of a cannonball. Historians agree that a Persian emperor had ordered its demolition in the 18th century for religious reasons, before abandoning the idea. This pillar will always continue to exert a fascination on scientists, and particularly archaeologists, because it is one of the few monuments prior to the Islamization of the locality. An archaeologist by the name of Wilhelm König was excavating in the locality of Kujut Rabu in Baghdad, Iraq, in the 1930s. He discovered a curious object. A clay pot about 10 centimeters long, closed at the top by a bitumen stopper, from which an iron rod protrudes. The composition of the object astonished the archaeologist, because in his eyes it was almost in every respect a rudimentary electric battery. Indeed, the rod was contained in a copper cylinder insulated at the base by a bitumen pad. To create electrical voltages, only 2 elements were needed: conducting wires and an acid. Although the voltages produced by such an object would be very low, it would nevertheless be the oldest electric battery ever discovered, dating back to the 3rd century AD. However, Wilhelm König has against him many scientists who refute his hypotheses. According to them, this strange object is simply a vase designed to contain and transport scrolls, and that it is a pure coincidence that it looks like a battery. The function of this pottery is still debated to this day. Was it the first form of electrochemical device or a sophisticated portfolio? In China, near the city of Nanying, there is an ancient stone quarry called the Yangshan Quarry. It was exploited since the first centuries of the Christian era and is today a tourist and historical site. This quarry provided an immense quantity of stones, intended for the construction of the monuments which transformed the aspect of the area. But if this site is so well known and visited today, it is because of the huge commemorative stele that is located there. The construction of this stele was abandoned. It was supposed to measure nearly 70 meters high. In the middle of the construction, the project was abandoned because it was materially impossible that such colossal stones to be transported, collected, and installed. One of the tallest Chinese steles measures 17 meters by comparison. This project was too ambitious and had to be cancelled. Despite this, the quarry, as well as the incomplete stele, remain remarkable and worthy of admiration. This is the end of our video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, don't hesitate to like and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments which of these historical inventions fascinates you the most.